Welcome to the College of Complexes. This is our 373rd meeting since we started in February of 2009. We put a speaker on every week, a different subject. We require a speaker to take a position on an issue or express a point of view. They have to be for or against something. We don't care what it is. We give a speaker an hour to make a presentation. If they go over an hour, we cut them off. Up to an hour. If anybody interrupts the speaker, we remind the interrupter that we listen to only one fool at a time. That's one of our rules. Then we have questions and answers from the audience, not speeches. Then we have remarks, rebuttals. Everybody in this audience that wants to gets 5 minutes or tell who can sit, we can sit anywhere. Oh, there he is. Anyway, I lost my train of thought.
One speaker at a time.
One fool at a time. And if we
Just an hour.
people seated here. You win one, I'm sitting here. Should I start over? No, it's all right. No. We put a different speaker in every week and every subject. Our speaker tonight is Hadi Jawad. He's going to talk about, well, before I get into that, are there any announcements? Now's the time for announcements. Anyone have any announcements?
Turn off your phone.
Turn off my phone.
Everybody turn them off.
Oh, yeah. If you have an announcement, make it.
With a full mouth, no less. Well, like Tom told you, welcome to the group tonight. We're so glad you chose to come out, be with us this evening, and we really hope you enjoy the program and the good food here at the restaurant.
It is good.
Hope you can put Italian away. There's quite a variety on there. I know I've tried a lot of it, and I've enjoyed it. I'm sorry, I'm still chewing. I apologize. I didn't know I was going to get up here at this moment. Anyway, I want to remind those of you who already know and tell those of you who are first-timers here that, Tom started this group up a number of years ago. He participated in a group like it in Chicago for many years. And he only collects $3 from us to come to the meeting. That has several factors in it. One, our kind restaurant where we're eating tonight does not charge us a room fee. Otherwise, we might be paying, $10 to come to the meeting to cover the room costs. And we appreciate that very much. And so what I want to be sure and say to you is, please, whether you've ordered a large or a small meal, show your appreciation to our servers who are coming out here and serving a whole ton of people at one time, which can be a real challenge for a speaker, for a server. They're part of the family of the owners, and in all sincerity, the service has picked up and gotten better since the family is doing it all. So enjoy it. Tom doesn't run it in the black. It costs him more money to print the forms, buy the paper, pay for the speaker's meals, and do the various and sundry things. He keeps it very modest, but he's making no money doing that. He's losing money. So please be kind with your $3 donation. Don't try to dodge that little dribble, right? And be kind to our servers. And again, we're just so darn glad you came out tonight. I hope you enjoy the meeting and you learn something from it and you walk away with more than you came in. So thanks again for coming tonight. Enjoy it.
Okay, just next week we have Dr. Robert Evans. He's going to talk about how families can suffer fewer losses as a result of heart disease. It's on your itinerary. I'm not going to read all this. August 8th on white contribution to racial equality. That's Dr. Chris Bolt. He's going to talk about that. On August 12th on a market-based solution to climate change. That's on your itinerary. Again, I won't read all this. On September 2nd, Gene Lance will be here. He's the president of Lance Retired Emeritus. He'll talk about Labor Day, past, present, and future. That's on your itinerary also. But our speaker tonight is Hadi Jawad. He's going to talk about how the U.S.-Saudi relationship outdated its has the U.S.-Saudi relationship outdated its utility. He's with the Dallas Police and Dallas, not Peace. I didn't bring my glasses anyway. Dallas Peace and Dallas Peace Center and Peace and Justice Center. I should have brought my glasses with me. Oh well. We'll discuss and agree and argue how the spread of Saudi influence in the Middle East has led to the emergence of the most No. Form of radical Islamism, threatening not only the region but American interests as well. He will also contend that while close ties with the Saudi monarchy have served U.S. national interests
I'm the coach.
in the past 7 decades, the time has come to end this special relationship. Did you want to say something?
No.
That's a good one.
So without further ado, please give a very, very warm welcome to our speaker, Hadi
Looks like we're off to a wonderful start here.
You can only do better.
Don't know where this is going to go, yeah?
You can only do better.
Well, thank you, Tom, very much for that introduction, and thank you all for being here. And I have some friends in the audience. I want to give a quick shout out to 2 folks here. One is way in the back with the dark glasses, Dr. Rick Halpern. He's the director of the Anti Human Rights Program. And one of my colleagues here, Aftab Siddiqui. He is, like me, Pakistani American. I am a Shia, and he is a Sunni. And I'm saying that because it's going to be relevant to our discussion this evening about this relationship that we've had with Saudi Arabia since 38 is when they found oil. That's when it really kicks in. So what I'm gonna talk about is this special relationship, and there's one more country in the region that we have a special relationship with. You all know that one? Israel. We have a special relationship with Israel, and we also have a special relationship with Saudi Arabia. I'm going to talk about why I think that this relationship has outlived its utility. What it was meant for before, back in the 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s, all that belongs to a different era. Things have changed. The world has changed. And I'm also going to point out that our sort of unquestioned and blind support for the current regime, the monarchy, is really hard to understand. And we're going to get into it because it is unbelievable what is going on in the dynamic between our nation and the nation of Saudi Arabia. So let me begin with And Rick, I might need some help from you, bud. So is there a chance you can help me out? Come up here, you'll become some human rights stuff. Because this guy is an expert. I'm not an expert, I'm an activist. So you stand by, okay? All right. So in 1848, the twice Prime Minister of England, a man named Lord John Henry Palmerston. I've never heard that name before, but he said something really, really interesting that has survived the course of time, at least 2-3 centuries now. He said, England, he's talking about England, he says, we have no eternal allies and we have no perpetual friends. Our interests are eternal and perpetual, and those interests, it is our duty to follow. It's a doctrine, right? This is how a world power thinks. It says, I don't have any eternal friends, I don't have any permanent enemies, all I have is a power. And England was a power in 1848, a global power, that all we have is interest. That is all that matters to us, is our national interest. This guiding principle of supernations, superpowers, was echoed by France de Gaulle, Charles de Gaulle of France. It was also echoed recently by Condoleezza Rice, National Security Advisor to George W. Bush. This is how big nations think. I mean, this is, but there's an issue, there's a problem here, because the United States is probably the only major country in the world where people talk seriously about the relation of the nation's values towards foreign policy. Americans are like that. And what I'm saying is that we might be unique in that aspect, that we think about our values, things that we deem to be valuable, that should also have some impact on our foreign policy, how we conduct ourselves in the world. But the doctrine of supernation says, no, you can't do that. James Baker used to talk about that a lot when he was in, whose administration is it? Ronald Reagan?
Herbert.
He served for 3 presidents.
No, George H. George H. He should talk about that, how our foreign policy works, how does it move forward, you know. It's complicated stuff. You know, another value that we have that has become universal now is that we hold dear is the statement by our founding fathers when they said, all men are created equal. That's something dear, I guarantee you, to every person in this room. That's a principle that we hold close to our hearts as Americans. We believe this stuff. It has had an impact on us. This is how we are. This is how we are as Americans. This is stuff that's going on way in the back of our minds, right? That's what these values are. They're like guiding lights that guide us. Let me talk a little bit about Saudi Arabia, and I'm going to diverge from that and then come back to it, because that's what I'm here to talk to you about. So a couple of caveats. I'm a Muslim. This is not an attack on Islam. This is, and I'm not speaking as a historian or a scholar. I'm just an activist, and that's my pass, right? That's my key out the door. Saudi Arabia, if you don't know already, is the most repressive regime in the world, or at least one of the most repressive regimes. North Korea might qualify too. Yeah, but we're not giving North Korea billions of dollars. Right? It denies its citizens freedom of assembly. Couldn't gather like this. Freedom of speech. I couldn't be up here criticizing Saudi Arabia. And I'm going to talk more about that because I've got some trepidations. You know, I've been in the public sphere for 30 years now here in Dallas. Rallies and this and that, and took on George W. Bush's war in Iraq policy, and did all kinds of stuff, sticking my neck out. CIA, FBI investigations. FBI came knocking on my door, wanted to know who I was, what I was doing, blah, blah, blah. They wanted me to be on the same page as they were. And I don't hang out with FBI agents. But I have trepidations now as I speak about this issue. Because, you know, the brother just told me it's going to be on YouTube. The world to see. Criticism, as we will discover, dissent in Saudi Arabia, for example, is treated as treason. Right? Citizens can be beheaded for insulting Islam, or the king for spreading atheism, or for being convicted as a homosexual, or for practicing sorcery. There is discrimination against entire groups of people, like women who are forced to cover themselves completely in public and they're not allowed to drive. This is really onerous. Women are subject to an oppressive male guardianship system which dictates that every woman has a male guardian from birth to death. And it's this male guardian that makes decisions for this woman. This guardian controls all aspects of a woman's life. A system, what has been called gender apartheid. Saudi Arabia is the most gender-based, segregated society in the world. Now, I'm just going to point out a little hypocrisy. The liberation of Afghan women, the women of Afghanistan, was cited relentlessly as the reason for the Western invasion of Afghanistan in 2003. We're going to liberate Afghan women. But when confronted with the plight of Saudi women, you say, what? What are you talking about? What problem? You all with me?
Yeah.
Everybody happy? Yeah. Another underreported story in Saudi Arabia is the really tragic tale of migrant workers.
Yeah.
Saudi Arabia's total population is, anybody guess? 30 million. 30 million people in Saudi Arabia. 10 million out of those 30 million are migrant workers. 10 million. 1 out of 3 person living in Saudi Arabia is a migrant worker. These people come from the poor countries in the region, Pakistan, where I'm from, Bangladesh, a lot, Philippines, Thailand, the whole region there. These guys do most of the menial work that Saudis would absolutely refuse to do. Their status, once they land in the country, can be best described as that of an indentured servant. So if you're a poor Bangladeshi and you want to go work in Saudi Arabia, you just don't travel to Saudi Arabia and start looking for work. You have to be sponsored by a Saudi national who says, I'm the guarantor for this person. I'm the one who's going to bring this person in. And they come in for construction work, for common labor, whatever it is. You know, you could be an engineer coming in, right? But you have to be sponsored. You just can't show up over there. So, in many of these cases, and I'm going to hold up this book here right now. This is a book written by Medea Benjamin called Kingdom of the Unjust. It's a new book. I think it came out less than a year ago. Kingdom of the Unjust, Behind the U.S.-Saudi Connection. A lot of the...
Show us the cover.
Oh, okay. A lot of the things that I'm saying to you are based on this book.
The camera.
Sorry. It's a great work. Medea is, if you don't know who she is, she's one of the most amazing women and activists in our country right now. I have some of her homies back there. That's one of her homies, the 2 homies right there. They hang out with Medea Benjamin. I'm going to get back to what I was saying. I'm going to tell you about Medea a little bit. Medea, I came across her in the 1990s. She's about this tall. She's very, I don't know how much she weighs, probably 95 pounds, 90 pounds. Was in a group that went to Iraq in the 1990s when the UN had imposed draconian sanctions on Iraq during the reign of Saddam Hussein. And the sanctions were very complete. I mean, there was nothing going in, right? So she went in a group and they took erasers and pencils and candy to give to the Iraqi children. But the main goal was to bust the sanctions. bust those sanctions because they were killing children in Iraq at the rate of 5,000 under the age of 5 every month.
Yeah.
5,000 children under the age of 5. These are UN sanctions, and the US is backing it, right? We are the one enforcing it, actually, because only we could. So anyway, she goes to Iraq and takes on the bureaucracy of Saddam Hussein and this kind of work. So she inspired me so much back then. And I was telling my friends that when she came out with this book and all the work she has done in Saudi Arabia, my just admiration for her just went off the roof, you know. And this is a woman, this tall man, just tireless, just a heart that beats for other people, I guess, more than you possibly can for yourself. So many of these migrants, when they come to Saudi Arabia, their passports, in many cases, although it's against the law, against Saudi law, they confiscate their passports. There's rampant abuse of these migrant workers, including the women that suffer from rape. There's wage theft, and this is on a scale. I mean, we're talking about 10 million people in this country, and they're working in people's homes, but there's no way for you to go and see and check and see what's going on, because you cannot file a complaint. The only thing you can possibly do is call your embassy, and you are lucky if your embassy is going to come and help you. And we will discuss the reasons for that also. So y'all get this? I mean, this is like, oh my God, you know, what's going on over here? And maybe if Rick gets a chance to, he can talk more about that stuff. Physical, suffice to say, is physical, sexual, mental, emotional abuse of vulnerable migrants is widespread and goes unpunished. Oh, just as an FYI, and Rick, you can bear me out, slavery was abolished in Saudi Arabia in 1962. Oh my God! So we'll talk about what makes these people tick. You know? Saudi Arabia has crushed democratic movements in Bahrain and Egypt just recently, as the Arab Spring was unfolding all across the Middle East. The Bahrainis, who are a majority of the population in a tiny monarchy, really small group of people that rule over a majority. So Bahrain is a majority Shia, people like me. And the kings are this guy. No, not really. I mean, couldn't be close. So, and Egypt, we saw the same thing unfold. Saudi Arabia is using, I don't know if they've stopped or not, they said they will. They might still be using banned cluster munitions in Yemen. You all know cluster munitions? Yeah. These are brightly colored yellow, red, green, neon almost, small bombs which children are drawn to immediately. And as soon as you pick it up, it goes off. So you see a lot of kids with hands blown off and legs blown off. They picked up one of these munition bombs. And we sell to them. There's some good news here actually, Aftab and Rick. There was one company that was making cluster munitions here in Texas that, because of activists like these guys and other people saying, hey, you can't sell this stuff. This is against the law. And they stopped. They stopped producing cluster munitions in Texas and in the world. Nobody's doing that anymore. But that's a blessing, yeah? Oh my God. Saudi Arabia promotes an ultra-conservative form of Sunni Islam throughout the world known as Wahhabism. Wahhabism. It's a subsect of the Sunni ideology of Islam. The autocratic ruling family, whose wealth is estimated to be between 1.4 and $10 trillion. That's how much money these people have. Oh my God. They live a life of unimagined extravagance and decadence. I mean, I just go crazy hearing how they blow this money around the world. There's reports in U.S. newspapers. They came to California a couple of years ago, hired this mansion out in the countryside on the mountainside that rents for $1 million a month or something, and then the debauchery, the alcohol, the prostitution that these people involved in. And this was not just an ordinary Saudi official. This was one of the sons of one of the kings of Saudi Arabia. And the things that you can Google this: California and Saudi prince and expensive mansion, and it's just a horrific story of how arrogant and these people are, and the depth of hubris that they bring. So both Republican and Democratic parties, 12 presidents in this relationship have served Saudi Arabia in my mind, in my analysis. The U.S. and Saudi special relationship since 1932 was initially based on oil, but as the years went by, the U.S. started importing more oil from Canada. We expanded our own domestic production. We became less dependent upon Saudi oil. Today, only 13% of our oil needs are met by Saudi oil. So what's shifted? If we're not needing oil anymore, they did some cooperation with us back in the Cold War era with some intel work. They were a buffer against communists, and the U.S. liked them also. I don't know if you noticed or not that they were a bulwark against Nasser in Egypt. They did not like Nasser. Gamal Abdel Nasser in the 50s and emerged as a powerful populist guy, and he was mobilizing all the Arabs. And they got terrified, and the U.S. agreed with that and said, yes, Nasser is definitely a threat to all of us. So this relationship goes back, and it has its ups and downs and all that good stuff. So what has shifted? What has shifted is that Saudi Arabia has emerged as the largest purchaser of U.S. weapons. $115 billion under the Obama administration alone in 8 years. $115 billion. It's a staggering amount of money. And Trump comes in, and Trump goes to the yard, and you all saw that, right? How much more? How much more did Trump promise them? 100 billion? 100 billion. Another $100 billion. This is insanity, yeah? I think you will get to my conclusion that this is insanity. So the U.S. is by far the largest exporter of arms in the world, and Saudi Arabia, at 33%, is the largest consumer of American-made weaponry. They buy 33% of what we produce. That's a staggering amount. Yeah, 33% of our weapons go there. 43 different arm deals were made under President Obama, and Congress rubber stamped every one of them. In a great irony, and this is one of the sticking points in this argument, in a great irony, some of these weapons have been channeled to terrorist groups such as Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and their affiliates in Yemen, Iraq, and Syria. Not from us, they come from the Saudis. The Saudis arm these people. The same people that we're fighting, they're getting our weapons through Saudi Arabia. That's what I'm telling you. This is, what do you call this? Like a mind boggle, stupid. I mean, I've got some profanity wanting to come out, but you know what I'm saying. This is absolutely crazy. You know? There's no way you can balance this stuff out that, hey, it makes sense at some level. So I want to talk a little bit about Yemen, because that's really close to my heart, and we've been at the Peace Center, we've been talking about Yemen a lot. A great tragedy is unfolding in Yemen, where Saudi Arabia, using aircraft supplied to the US, is bombing civilian populations. This is a clear violation of the rules of war that could be charged as crimes against humanity. And the US is an active participant. We're providing weapons, obviously the aircraft, the bombs, and refueling, most importantly, refueling capabilities. Assisted by the US, Saudi Arabia has relentlessly bombed Yemen in the last 2 years, killing more than 10,000. And there's people who are saying this figure a lot bigger than 10,000. Saudis have bombed mosques, they have bombed schools, they have bombed hospitals, they have bombed marketplaces, they have bombed funerals. Because they can. Because they have the support. Yemen imports 80% of its food. 80% of the food is coming from outside. We have a population of 28 million. What has happened is Saudi Arabia has put a siege around the port of Hodeidah. It's on the Red Sea. They've blockaded it, and then they have bombed all the cranes that unload ships. So all these ships are going from around the world laden with humanitarian aid and food and this and medicines, but they can't unload them. They're sitting out at sea. So two things going on with the Yemenis, and it breaks my heart. That's why I'm sharing this with you, because at some point you say, what do I do with this, Yemenis are 28 million people. 7 million right now, according to many international agencies, are facing famine. Recently, how can things get better? You're being bombed, you don't have food to eat, right? You worry about eating or feeding your family or feeding your children, and then you have to worry about getting bombed. Now 30,000 cases of cholera have broken out. 300,000. 300,000 cases of cholera in a country that has no facilities to deal with it. Sorry to be such a buzzkiller, man. It's just terrible stuff. The US government actually is prohibited by its own laws that prohibit the sale of weapons that are being used against civilian populations. It's a violation of US law. We don't do that. We can't do that. Give me just 1 minute so I can sort my papers. Well, actually, I'm going to start winding it up. The other issue that I'm seeing, is that the Saudi influence is growing and growing around the world in Muslim countries. So I'm going to give you just two examples, although there are many other. Amongst the many other, Pakistan is the best one probably. But I'm going to tell you about two places, Indonesia and Bosnia. You all might remember Bosnia back in the 90s had a Muslim population that the US and the Western nations got together and saved them from being slaughtered by the Serbs and the Croats. But let me talk about Indonesia first. Earlier this year, there was a very popular guy running for the mayor of Jakarta, the largest city in Indonesia, running for mayor. This guy was extremely popular amongst the citizens of Jakarta. Even though he is a Muslim, even though he's a Christian. He's a Christian in a Muslim majority country. The largest Muslim nation in the world is Indonesia. You all know that, right? It's the largest Muslim nation. And in that country, in the largest city, this Christian guy is widely popular, and he's running for office, and he's going to win. So just like 6 weeks before the election, he gets accused by institutions that have been placed in Indonesia by the largesse of the Saudi government. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars in mosques, in schools, in centers. And they all push forward that same narrow, puritanical, dysfunctional, hateful ideology of anybody who's not just like them. That's their problem. And they don't like Jews, they don't like Christians, and damn sure don't like me, because I'm apostate. And I'm not sure they'll like you either. What I heard you say, you know. So just 2 weeks before that, he is accused, this guy who's running from here, is accused of blasphemy. That's the latest stunt these people have. They accuse you of blasphemy. You insulted our beloved prophet, or you insulted our religion. And they got him arrested and they put him in jail. This is just 2 months ago. So this is the kind of influence that they are having on Muslim nations, where Muslims are in majority. The other example I'm going to give you of is Bosnia. Now, in Indonesia and Bosnia, the type of Islam that has been practiced there is it's like diametrically opposed to this vision that Wahhabism is all about. It's inclusive, it has music, it has charity and neighborliness and kindness and forgiveness and learning to get along with everybody and love your neighbor like you love yourself. All of the things that good Christians think of. Yeah? Open-minded. Am I right? So far, so good. Diametrically opposite. And Bosnia and Indonesia practice that same kind of Islam. Very tolerant, very inclusive, very kind. So in Bosnia, when the war was going on with the Serbs, a bunch of these mujahideen, trained by that same mind that created the fighting power in Pakistan with the Taliban. Taliban come from Saudi Arabia too. It's that same ideology, same thinking, narrow, puritanical, hateful. So war broke out, they come from, and then of course the war ends. There's about 10,000 of them or something, I think, if I remember correctly. But most of them don't go back, they stay there. They stay in Bosnia. And today, Bosnia is a different place. Bosnia was a place where the effects of Islam had sort of blossomed in a very beautiful way. Kind, beautiful, happy people. Muslims in Europe. But they are now being taken over. Like this is what these people see. Oh my God, they have strayed away from Islam. They have strayed away from Islam. He's an apostate. He's an infidel. The problem is they've got so much damn money. So much damn money. And we give them guns, bombs. So these guys are powerful, right? You understand why I'm afraid that some of these guys are going to see me talk about them? I'm being honest with you. I'm a little concerned. I shared that with my partner, and she said, "I'm surprised because you never shied away from, before. But it's real. It's palpable. Something could be misconstrued, misunderstood. But the problem is real. The problem is real. So what can we do? Now, there's some good news on the horizon. Congress, amazingly, I was so amazingly pleasantly surprised. And last time, which was I think less than 6 weeks ago, because of people like Chris Murphy, Democratic Senator from Connecticut, because of Republican Representative Walter Jones of North Carolina, because of Republican Ron Paul, senator, and other Republicans, said we cannot continue to give these people this kind of weaponry without some kind of review, some kind of oversight. By God, we can't do this. But the lobby, I mean the weapons industry, you can imagine. I mean, DFW is infested with defense contractors. I'm sorry, that's the wrong word probably. Some of them will probably work for these companies, you know. But that's reality, right, of our lives, you know. The weapons industry is strong and big and powerful. But anyway, because of the hard work of these people, that we must reevaluate, we must re-examine what we are doing with Saudi Arabia special relationship. We came within 4 votes of defeating the Trump sale. 48 senators voted against. I'm just blown away because the weapons industry has so much power over these senators. They give them so much friggin' money. Yet these senators said no. So we came close, 48. So last thing, I would like to read something from Dia. I can't finish this thing without you not hearing her words. And she talks about what we can do, you know, where does this go? She says, what could the US and the West do to support Saudi civil society? And there is a civil society. There are activists, there's human rights activists, there's all kinds of good people wanting change in their country, but you know they face these horrific people. Year after year, the U.S. State Department puts out a Saudi country report that lays out in excruciating detail the pervasive restrictions on universal rights such as freedom of expression, assembly, association, movement, and religion, and a lack of equal rights for women, children, and non-citizen workers. This is what the U.S. government wrote. It's a big deal. The U.S. government is admitting all this stuff. But then the government shelves the report and refuses to publicly criticize the monarchy, apply any kind of sanctions, or even restrict weapon sales. I mean, I can't imagine any other nation getting this kind of a verdict, and there's no consequence. But somehow they get a pass. In a fascinating 2016 interview with President Obama, maybe I'll leave that alone, that's too political. It's time to break with that orthodoxy and re-examine the basic assumptions about their alliance. Number 1, assumption. We need stable allies in the region, and Saudi Arabia is one of the very few. For many decades, the U.S. government has viewed the Saudis as a rock of stability in a volatile region. Perhaps that was the case many years ago, with U.S. military backing, of course, but it is certainly not true today. Saudi Arabia is responsible for much of the chaos in the region, and the kingdom itself could erupt like a volcano at any moment. 2, assumption. We need Saudi oil for our needs. The U.S. gets only 13% of its oil from Saudi Arabia, and there's a glut of oil in the global market. U.S. domestic production and increased supplies from non-Arab countries, along with green energy alternatives and better conservation efficiency, reduce Saudi leverage on us. And one day, Saudi Arabia will run out of oil. Gone are the days when the Saudi could use their oil to hold the U.S. hostage. Today, it's the Saudis who are held hostage by their own dependence on oil revenues. Number 3, assumption. We need Saudi intelligence cooperations to stop terrorist attacks against us. Years of Saudi intelligence cooperation certainly didn't stop the 9/11 attacks. Yeah, 15 out of 19 people came out of their country. What kind of intelligence are they providing us? Are you getting your money's worth? It's a bad deal, I say. That's Trump's favorite thing too, right? Bad deal. Today, the Saudis offer intelligence sharing and taking assistance and token assistance in fighting the Islamic State, but they bear great responsibility for creating the very group they are giving us intel about. Another mind-blowing lie. You all know that, right? ISIS, the whole theology, the ideology of ISIS is Wahhabism, the one that is practiced in Saudi Arabia. Okay, this is the end. It is shameful that for decades the U.S. government and its Western allies have been supporting Saudi kings, princes, and religious fanatics. It's shameful that the U.S. government has authorized the sale of billions of dollars of weapons to a regime that beheads peaceful protesters and bombs civilians in neighboring countries. The U.S. government should ban weapon sales to the kingdom, as some of our counterparts in Europe are doing. Instead of state visits and trade deals and best friends forever status, the U.S. relationship should be conditioned on democratic openings. Our real Saudi allies should be the human rights leaders. Our real Saudi allies should be human rights leaders, the pro-democracy advocates, the lawyers calling for a fair legal system, the migrant workers demanding their rights, the women trying to overturn the guardianship system, and the religious minorities asking for full citizenship. These are the groups and individuals who deserve our support, our friendship, and our admiration. These are the people who can build a modern nation that respects and protects the rights of all its citizens. Thank you very much.
We can stay here and answer questions. Who wants to be first?
You mentioned that Saudi Arabia passed a law banning slavery, but you had described slavery with that whole portion of the population. And a lot of those people may well be there, do you think this possible? Not because they really knew what they were getting into, but because they were essentially carted off into slavery.
It is a modern form of slavery. There's no doubt. Rick can probably speak to that. Rick, you want to? He's the expert.
I don't want to say too much about slavery, but I would like to add this, because you mentioned it. This is current. There are 14 human rights activists. This is a current Amnesty International urgent action. There are 14 human rights activists who face imminent execution in Saudi Arabia, who were arrested merely for exercising what you talked about earlier, their right of free speech. And if anybody is interested in contacting the officials either in Saudi Arabia or the embassy, I'm happy to give you my email. You can email me and I will I'll email you this urgent action, but this is as critical as it gets.
Speak it onto the mic there.
I'm just saying that there's an Amnesty International urgent action right now of 14 human rights activists in Saudi Arabia who face execution for being arrested for peacefully exercising their rights of dissent in that country. And if anybody is interested in contacting Saudi officials either there or via the embassy, I'm happy to leave you my email address and I'll forward you that action. But that is as critical as it gets.
Give your email on the microphone.
Okay, right quick. It is, if you're interested, it is RHALP, as in Pennsylvania, RHALPERI at mail, M-A-I-L, mail.smu.edu. rhalpery at mail.smu.edu, and I'm happy to forward that action to you.
Can you all tell he's from Alabama?
Yes, is your Dallas location, Dallas Peace and Justice Center? Is this the only location?
Speak into the mic, please.
Yeah, is this the only location you have?
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
That's the only one. Dallas based.
What's the impact that you had, let's say, in getting your message out to our representatives in bringing this to their attention to try and get us to sever our relationship with Saudi. Number two, any comments on the fact that about 18 of our hijackings, 9/11, were Saudi citizens?
15 out of 19.
15 out of 19.
Yes, sir.
And is the Saudi government financing ISIS Al-Qaeda?
You know, the election, not the election, the 9/11 Commission, what they ruled was that there was no direct connection between the Saudi government and any of these hijackers. No direct connection that they gave them money and told them, hey, go fly a plane into a building.
Are they financing terrorism? I mean, are they financing any of the people that
Yeah.
our soldiers against in, say, Iraq, Afghanistan, ISIS, Al-Qaeda? Are they financing any of those directly, indirectly?
I'll let Aftab answer. So he's good on this issue.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, Saudi Arabia has been really financing a number of groups in different regions of the world, especially in Syria and Iraq and all these places. Saudi Arabia has been financing different what do you might call them, terrorist groups or militant groups.
And our intelligence forces know that, and our government leaders know that they're doing that.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sure they know about it.
Last question, how much of our debt do they own? How much are we indebted to them? Say about bonds, 1 trillion, 2 trillion?
Well, I can tell you, they invested $3.5 billion in Uber, $3.5 billion in Uber.
Okay.
So the
And
check.
one of the Saudi sheikhs is the second largest shareholder in Fox News too.
Yeah,
So,
that is
And
right.
City
you may
Court.
want to put that out.
And City Court. Here's the problem, the way I see it. They give money, they have so much friggin' money, they're probably staying up at night and, you know, what to do with this. So they give money to Yale, they give money to Harvard, they give money to all of the, huh?
Can't hear you back here. Use the
Speak
microphone.
more loud. I thought I was yelling. So they give money to all think tanks. They don't care you're Democrat or Republican. They're putting out a lot of money in the U.S. and around the world. So this is where it gets really, really insidious. And this is the reason why people like me and Aftab and Dr. Halpern, you know, are speaking out and saying, hey, this is a train wreck here. You know, we need to wake up to this fact and realize that we cannot continue to arm these people, give them more weapons, because they're doing nothing but creating chaos and havoc around the world.
Are any of our political power brokers listening to your message? Is it getting through?
Well, I just mentioned to you that 48 senators, this was unbelievable, that 48 senators came out and voted against Trump's arms deal to Saudi Arabia.
What is the reason Saudi Arabia is attacking Yemen? What strategic interest? What strategic interest does it have for them?
That's a really good question. You want to take that? Or?
Yeah, I can take that.
Okay.
Yemen is a neighboring state, and Saudi Arabia thinks that it is their right to have a client state. And so, when the president was overthrown by the people of Yemen, he fled to Saudi Arabia, and the people, and now there are different groups ethnic groups or religious groups in Yemen, and one of the major groups are kind of they're known as Houthis, and they're kind of practice the Shiite version of Islam, different than Iran and the rest of the world, but it is a form of Shiite religion. That is known as Zaydis. And so that was the reason when they came in and tried to do away with the government. Saudi Arabia went after them.
Let me give a quick my take on this thing. 1979 was a pivotal year in that region. That's the year that the mullahs took over in Iran. Yeah, remember that? The embassy crisis. Russia invaded Afghanistan that same year. 1979 was a critical year. So when the revolution happened in Iran and these mullahs, these conservative religious clerics came into power, the Saudis were terrified. They were really, really scared because they saw the rise of Shiism. And Shia and Sunni faiths have coexisted for the last 1400 years, right? They have in Iraq, for example, there was no question of Shia Sunni. The society had melded so much, so every family had Shias and Sunnis because of intermarriage, right? So, but in 1979, when the mullahs took over Iran, Saudi Arabia responded in fear. Now, one more thing to add to that is all of the oil in Saudi Arabia, all of it is in a region towards Iran on the southeastern coast, and it's all Shia there. All of the oil that Saudi Arabia has is under the feet of the Shias. Now you would think that the Shias would be rich because of the oil. The opposite is true. They are subjugated. They're not allowed proper education. They don't get the top jobs. They don't. It's a community there. So my take on that is that this is the Saudi Arabian response, the monarchy's response to a rising or ascendant Iran. The connection between, you asked about Yemen. So Afsab told you that Yemenis practice a form of Shiism, of Shia Islam. It's a subset. It's not the one in Iran, like you said. It's a subset of it. But that's just enough to scare the Saudis into thinking that one of these days these people will all rise up and take our oil away, and of course Iran will. So it's a fear-based response, and you know, they have a lot of wealth and they have a lot of status, and they want to protect that. This is unimaginable wealth that these people have, and it's blended with a very caustic ideology. Anyway, you had a question.
Yes. I'm just going to point these two things out. Though Donald Trump and the king of Saudi Arabia exchanged pleasantries and he ran towards them, haven't you seen something? There's 48 senators that said this is a problem. Also, Pakistan gets $550, what is it, billion?
No.
$1 million?
Yeah.
And they just said, we're going to back off this. And then also Mathis refused to let Blackwater, who now has Eric Prince, that was running, you know, basically the CIA there. He's now running Saudi Arabia military response and training.
Yeah, that's another
Aren't those
lecture.
positives? And Mathis did that, and then also some of the, I mean, I know it's pissing in the wind, but more people are aware and not blindly going along.
Yeah, I'll agree.
Everything you've talked about, I understand.
Thank you.
And thank you for bringing it up.
All right.
A lot of people don't even understand or care.
Yeah.
Yes, very interesting. Of course, Britain had a lot to do with the situation out there. But given the fact that these princes are mostly Western educated these days, surely the time will come when funding this terrorist operation, which is causing havoc all over the West, especially in Europe. We see it in London last few months. Surely they would believe eventually that it's better to bribe people rather than sending out these religious mercenaries to kill people. And you would think that these better educated Saudis would see the error of doing this.
Yeah, well, in my mind, and I'm sort of, I'm really biased about this, but I would not bet on it that Saudi monarchy, princes and elites will come to their senses. I just can't bet on that. The genie is sort of out of the bottle on this issue, and it's not a pretty picture. their influence is widespread and worldwide in many countries. I just listed two. We can go down the list of all Muslim countries. They're doing this stuff in Europe. I mean, they've got their imams in Germany, and you know they're preaching that same puritanical, narrow, hateful vision of Islam that they have. I mean, for people, you know, at one time this Wahhabism thing was practiced only in one place in the world. It was only one place, Saudi Arabia. It was a sparsely populated place. You know?
Yeah, these madrasas, of course, these religious institutes were set up, funded by the Saudis, especially in Pakistan
and the U.S.
And the U.S. Was this purely tolerated because of the so-called freedom of religion? It just wasn't seen as a threat. But so, just to ask the question, what is the long-term objective of these princes and king? Do they want to sort of take over the world? I mean, what do they want everyone to become a student of an adherent to Wahhabi?
Rick's still here. He's a historian. Can you help me out, Rick? He's a historian. Come on up here. Come up here. Can you all give Rick a hand?
No,
Give me a good friend. He told me to come and back me up.
the primary goal, one of the primary goals, is to maintain Saudi supremacy with its vision of Islam against those who oppose it, such as Iran, Qatar, Yemen. It's to dominate the Gulf and to keep those in power, to keep those who are in power and their descendants. It's to secure the state at all costs. And to this end, the U.S. plays a horrifying role by providing the military necessity of the Saudis to do so. You know, not many people here could find, maybe not this group, but most Americans probably couldn't find Yemen or Saudi Arabia on a map. You know, in our mindset, it's over there. But I would put this out as a footnote of something else to do. If the Amnesty Urgent Action on behalf of the 14 activists isn't your cup of tea, then perhaps this is. This should be for everybody. You may have just seen the same story that I have. It's just been in the news the last couple of days, that the U.S. State Department is closing its war crimes office. This is, in essence, it's closing its human rights component. Now, I think everybody in here would say that those who are violating human rights around the world need to be brought to justice and held accountable.
That's right.
And with the U.S., the self-imposed purported leader of the free world, this sends a devastating message, especially to countries like Saudi Arabia, that you can go ahead and do what you want to do in your country to activists or other countries like Yemen with total impunity. So everybody here, you ought to be going home and sending Tillerson and the president a notice of dissent that you don't think that that office not only shouldn't be closed, but it ought to be funded to the nth degree.
That's right.
You know, this is on us as activists and human rights people. This is our job, is to do the best we can to hold this country accountable when it supports oppression and terrorism around the world. This is your money and my money at work, and we have to do this.
Thank you, Rick. Pretty good.
Well, I don't know if this question is for Hadi or for Rick here,
Okay.
but I was going to propose this question prior to the closing of the War Crimes Department. What kind of recourse does a country have against an extreme regime like that? I think it's against the American mindset, the American way, to single out a particular religion or sect. Yet, do we have no defense? And I was going to suggest something along the line of, going back to the days of Gandhi, something in the form of an oath of ahimsa, that, in other words, someone entering this country would basically not only agree to abide by the laws of this nation, but also by the spirit of never attacking and only being violent in your own defense. Do you have a comment on that?
Did you all hear me speak about Saudi Arabia as sort of an attack on Islam, or does it sound like that? Because it's not the, huh?
No.
It didn't? Okay. Rick, you wanna take this? Please help me out. This is way above my pay grade. He's good. He's
Does the
really
nation
good.
have recourse, Rick?
He's a good brother. I think sanction would be the best response. We sanction everybody that we want to, We go nuts with sanctions, We can impose sanctions on Saudi Arabia. But that's even going too far. Let's talk about the atrocities that this country is committing. So I don't want to get into the beliefs, right? As a Muslim, they're Muslims too, or claim to be. I'm not challenging their beliefs. I'm just challenging their behavior, the way they act, what they're doing with their money. I mean, there could be doing good things with that money, right? And I'll let Rick.
I may be the really wrong person to ask this question to. In this sense, my answer here is going to be really biased from the profession that I'm in. I'm a human rights educator. So to me, the real issue, the fundamental issue here is the struggle for education and hearts and minds to make two things possible, but this is a very difficult struggle. To bring the idea and the pedagogy of human rights into our schools, to train young people who ultimately will be the new leaders of this country, so that human rights is as mainstream to them as sports is to most of us of this generation. If we could talk about human rights in this country the way we talk about sports, we'd have a hell of a lot better country. And to that degree, of course, it would mean making human rights, dare I say mandatory, but a mainstream component of American foreign policy, which would be an ethical consistency. So you wouldn't have this perversion of coddling up under the moment. I said the same thing when other people were president, so I'm saying it now under this president, where we wouldn't be wrapping our arms around people such as Mr. Duterte in the Philippines, or Mr. Erdogan, or Mr. Putin, or anybody else who is as anti-democratic as they come. Human rights recognizes a single, consistent, ethical value that all people in this world, regardless of who they are, what their faith is, what their orientation is, what their skin color is, whatever, all 8 billion people walking around this earth have fundamental, inherent rights to a life with dignity and rights. And in this country, of course, we point the finger internally and externally at groups and label them under the big sum of other, whatever that other is, whether it's terrorist or gay or whatever. We like to point the finger, Muslim, and they are suddenly somehow, and now with the president, dehumanized to a degree where you can be immune to their plight, their suffering. And you're encouraged to be immune to their plight and suffering. This country needs to have human rights as a fundamental, mandatory component of how we treat people in this country and around the world. And until that happens, and it's not going to happen under this president, and it's probably not going to happen under the person who succeeds Mr. Trump of either party, because the Democrats are fundamentally as weak on this issue as their opponents, the Republicans, because it's not in our political mindset. You don't get to pick and choose and say, gay people need rights at this time. All people need rights at this time. And they need rights in this country and around the world. We don't use the right language to elevate the plight of people in Saudi Arabia or this country or Yemen or anywhere else, because we don't see them as individuals needing dignity and rights. So the struggle is to change the paradigm and make human rights as important for you and me here as it is for people in Saudi Arabia or Turkey or El Salvador or anywhere else. We have to look at the world through the prism of human rights. I didn't mean to preach, but I'm sad. I was the wrong person to ask. Human rights is where this needs to be.
I have a question for you. Where's the mic?
Already.
Given the American mindset that we've been so trained into, though, aren't you missing the fact that the 3 million or so in Vietnam and however many million in the Middle East are nothing but collateral damage?
Well, I don't miss that fact. I see it every day.
I mean, to me, it's astoundingly
Yes.
shocking that our government would just train people into this mindset that is just like hypnotism.
You know, and we have it, again, it's not a cliche. Human rights begin at home. And we have a very poor job in this country. We don't see all people in this country the same. We clearly have others in this country. It looks great chiseled in stone over the front door of the U.S. Supreme Court, equal justice under the law, which of course we all know is hypocritical and fallacious. It's just not the case. It has never been the case. And in my generation, when my country wanted to send me to Vietnam and kill people, you know, we didn't call them people. We had other epithets that we flung at them. And it's the same thing with every successive generation and prior generation to me. The sad history of human rights in the United States is the history of a few privileged, wealthy people who in general tend to be white Christian males against everybody else, including people that look like them and women, Native Americans, people of color. It's all been a struggle to recognize the diversity as equal. The real difficulty in American history is the E word, equality. And we're not there yet. And if we don't have it in this country, why should we care? I'm being sarcastic here. Why should we care about the plight of people in Saudi Arabia when we can't even find it on a map? We have so much education to do in this country. It's a struggle for hearts and minds. You're exactly right.
Isn't this caused by the media? Are they missing their responsibility, their duty?
I'd say you could pick any institution that misses its mark, including all faith communities. They miss the mark. Many of them clearly are on target, but all denominations of different faiths miss this mark of human rights and human dignity. The media does. Pick an institution, it falls short, because human rights is not a mainstream pedagogy in our mindset in this country. Not yet. Not yet.
You mentioned earlier some of the ways in which severing our ties with Saudi Arabia would look like, such as not selling them arms. Since we owe them about $2 trillion, I'm sure they would retaliate with putting that out on the open market. And oil too, since we only get about 13% of oil from them. in light of what happened during the 70s when we had the oil crisis. So my question is, what will severing our ties with them look like in detail?
Well, that answer has to come from an economist. Any economists here in this gathering? I have no clue what you mean. My prism is human rights. Like
Just
the
human
professor
rights?
said. Yeah.
So stop selling them arms. Yeah,
I'll give you my takeaway. My biggest takeaway from this whole thing. My biggest takeaway is that we need to stop selling weapons to these people. We need to stop it. That's all I'm saying.
Should we prevent them from buying our bonds and anything else, stuff like that? Plus, a lot of the families of the 9/11 hijackers wanted to sue them, but I think that was blocked. Should we prevent them?
They did sue them, and they won the case. Whether they get any money, that's a different case. Yeah?
So the next speaker, you need to have Professor Jeff Law from UT
Where's the mic?
come and speak
On the
about
mic, please.
the
I can suggest Professor Jeff Dumas from UTD to speak to the issue of a greening economy. That might be another speaker you could look into. He's certainly been to many of our
Hadi,
Yes, sir.
I have a multi-part question, so like
Okay.
20 seconds for each one would be all right. What do you think of Pakistan?
What do I think of Pakistan? Oh, it's my beloved homeland. I remember its gentle breezes and sweet smells of the flowers at night.
Iran?
Iran is my mother's ancestral home, holy place for me, holy city of Mashhad, where my ancestors are buried. I traveled there when I was a young man, 18 years old. I have family in Iran. Absolutely beautiful place on earth.
Turkey?
Huh?
Turkey.
Turkey. It's kind of interesting. I think what's happening in Turkey with Erdogan is not good for the long term nor the short term. This is sort of a return of the dreams of the Ottomans, the Ottoman Empire, great empire that spanned Europe and Asia for centuries. I think Erdogan is trying to recreate or relive the old Ottoman Empire. I don't like his policies.
Israel?
Israel. My sort of heart hurts for Israel. I think about how difficult it must be to live in that city, and they seem to enjoy a very high standard of living. To be surrounded by people that are hostile. I hope peace comes to Israel and the Palestinian people. I am in solidarity with thousands of activists, peace and justice activists that are in Israel that do great, amazing work. Rick told us about some stories when he returned from Israel, where the parents of a Palestinian home who lost their child and parents of an Israeli child got together to console each other. Those kind of things give me a lot of hope.
Russia?
Russia. I used to hang out at the Russian embassy when I was 14 years old in Pakistan. I was interested in Marx. I was reading the manifesto at the embassy. I had a lot of curiosity about communism, about Russia, about Karl Marx and Engels and the Russian Revolution, the Bolsheviks. So maybe 2 weeks into this thing, or maybe even less, the local version of the CIA shows up at my house, talking to my parents about what their son is doing hanging around at the Russian embassy. And I was forbidden to go there again.
NATO?
NATO. Difficult stuff. I don't like war machines. Thank you.
Syria?
Syria. That's another heartbreak, like a big piece of my heart is gone. The suffering is unimaginable. There's so much blame to go around in Syria. Anybody who tries to paint that crisis in a black and white picture is not being intellectually honest. There's lots of blame. All the parties that are involved in that tragedy are responsible for some of the blame. Libya, same. It's just a heartbreak.
Somalia. So, okay.
Are you Larry King?
So like Arabia's special from trumps everything else?
Say it again.
Arabia is like much worse than all this?
Saudi Arabia?
Yeah.
No, I'm not thinking in terms of better or worse. So, there's plenty of bad news. There's plenty of bad news to go around.
Thank you.
But I'm very hopeful. That's it. Thank you very much.
Okay to sit down now. Anywhere you like. There is okay. All right, now it's your turn to talk. So who wants to be first?
Why not?
Come on. You got 5 minutes.
Well, first, I would like to illustrate something. I had recommended here that they reverse the men's and women's bathrooms and put up a sign, and Tom's wife illustrated why. The sign would say, "Men to the left because women are always right." If you go back in history and look up Aleister Crowley, you'll see that from his efforts and organization, issued an organization called the Thule Gesellschaft in German, or the Thule Society. And out of that emanated the Nazi Party, and also out of the original founding organization, spun off from that, Skull and Bones at Yale University. They are Nazis, and all the members of it are trained as Nazis. And one fellow who got very unhappy with the whole thing took his girlfriend up one night. He had a key, and there, according to her, she wrote about it, there is a room dedicated to Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party. The Nazis trained the Wahhabi tribe during World War II. They are the Mideast Nazis. And everyone should read Jim Marr's book, The Rise of the Fourth Reich, because the Nazis won World War II. They let Germany fall. We beat Germany. That's what the history books show. But Martin Bormann established some 750 plus corporations worldwide and moved billions of dollars out there, and they got over 100,000 top Nazis out of that country. The Roman Catholic Church issued thousands of fake identification cards saying, well, these are priests, and they got out that way. All kinds of organizations got them out. And that's kind of the mindset still going on. And I think that's why the Bush family have been so closely related to the Saudi family all these years, because that's a strong connection. And it's very frustrating to think about this world in which we live and to see that our country, the strength that our country has been behind literally the criminal murders of millions of people in this world. The whole Vietnam War, we know that the Gulf of Tonkin thing never happened. That was phony. That was a war that whoever rules this whole show planned long in advance. A friend of mine told me about an Army officer he knew who was in intelligence, and he told him that he saw enough material come across his desk in the early 60s that he knew that there was going to be a war in Southeast Asia, and that it was planned, not estimated. One of the purposes was the killing of 50,000 Americans. They killed 58,000. These things are never just stupidity and diplomacy. They're planned decades ahead. The people who rule this planet are very smart and very evil. And we need to wake up to that rather than keep denying it. Oh, that can't be true. You know, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist and all of that. Wake up. Everything is a conspiracy. The planning of wars are conspiracies. They don't just happen. I had a friend who was in the CIA years ago, in the 70s, tell me that all wars, famines, and pestilences are planned events. They're not acts of nature. They're not stupidity and diplomacy. They're brilliance to make us think they're stupid. We can go into the occult more too. If you will go on the internet and look it all up, they pre-announce everything they do. That's a ritual they have to follow so that they're guiltless. And even though they hide it in their pre-announcement, because it's all codified, and we don't say no, therefore they're guiltless. And they do this all the time. I think this is a great presentation on Saudi Arabia. I've felt for years we should cut them off completely, that they have been perpetrating, well, not as much as we have, but they've been perpetrating a lot of evil in the Middle East. I am not happy with the Anglo world and what it does in this world. Between the United States and Great Britain, we have created all the turmoil in the Middle East. They've divided countries up and moved the Kurds out here and taken them away from their homelands and this and that and the other. We have created all of the conflict because we feed on it. That military-industrial complex that Eisenhower spoke of is huge. And they make a lot of money off of us going along with their crimes. They're behind feeding all that money into Congress that buys them off. So they'll agree to these things. If they don't buy them off, they'll blackmail them. It's easy to blackmail people. I was sitting at a little table in Washington, D.C. one time on a trip I took up there. About 9 guys around, and I'm thinking, why am I here? They're all talking about intelligence stuff, the shipment of night vision equipment into Zaire and this and that and the other. And then one of them said, well, if you can't get them with a bribe and you can't get them with a threat, you can always get them with a woman. And there have been a lot of people who have been blackmailed in Washington, D.C. and other places. This goes on all the time. It's an extremely corrupt mentality. And we need to stand on our principles and stand up against these kinds of things. I think the 2 groups that we've seen mentioned here that are active in trying to work for human rights are just a wonderful blessing to this country and this world. We need a whole lot more of it.
Anyone getting up to talk here?
Yes, actually, it really should be no surprise that America has been in this relationship because, in fact, actually, FDR was really on his deathbed when he met on a U.S. destroyer in the Red Sea to meet the King Ibn Saud and set up this relationship. I mean, because that's important to America. Because actually at that time, in fact, actually one of the reasons why Hitler lost the Second World War is because they were oil poor. Germany was oil poor. And so they made some really fateful decisions because of that. I mean, there wasn't enough oil in continental Europe so they had to get to the Caucasus. So they diverted a lot of their armies away from Moscow and so on. And so you see oil has played a huge role. And of course right now, in fact, one of the features of the economic world was Europe became awash with what was called euro dollars. Really, they were petrodollars. And so even though nominally the American economy was run by the Federal Reserve and fiscal policies of the government, in fact, any corporation that wanted to borrow money, which would put a dent in the monetary policy, actually went to Europe and just borrowed petrodollars. And so the answer really, if you want to dent Saudi Arabia, is to really put a freeze on financial flows into that country. And that would just stop them dead. because in fact, actually, there is a hopeful sign because just this last week or two, Saudi, in fact, is selling a fraction of the Saudi oil cartel on the London Stock Exchange, about 1%, I believe. Well, so in fact, there will be outside shareholders that have an interest in what goes on in Saudi Arabia, because in fact, they've been so dependent on oil money that, and of course there's been a huge drop in the last year or so by about 50%. So just as Venezuela is on its knees because of the drop, so Saudi Arabia is hurting. And so really speaking, I think long term, what they're doing, propagating this vile version of religion, and really I look around the world and I see the religion really as a cause of most problems, really, in the world. And candidly, I regard it as an evil myself. I distinguish between Christian religion and religion, because Christianity is totally different. Yeah, well, the tenets of Christianity are totally different from the Old Testament and the religion that we see it. We're all around the world, okay? Because what we see is bloodshed, what we see is killing people because of different religions. It just goes over and on and on and on. And it's all because of religion. And there's not an ounce of Christianity or good feeling involved. And usually it's used as Roman Empire did. I mean, it embraced so-called Christian religion really as a control mechanism, and so it's been ever since. So every dictator, every potentate wants to have his national religion, and of course people get bound up in it, and they will kill other people in the name of that religion, and that's why it's so evil, because it's something because it's so potent, and it's a belief system you can't rationally discuss it. It's not amenable to rational discussion. So that's the problem with it. And we see a potent effect in this country, actually, over it. It's some of the worst effects that happen. Anyway, so what my belief is with Saudi Arabia is they will be brought down by economic forces because they just cannot contain the economic system because they won't have the money. Now, when they're propagating this evil attack, especially in Europe, there's a backlash against them. They know where it's coming from. And really, Europe as a whole, even though England's going to leave it, in fact has more power, more money than the US does. Its economy is bigger than America in total. We're talking about the 26 nations. So in fact, as Albert said, basically Germany did win the war. They are the most powerful entity now. So Angela Merkel, the Chancellor, does speak for Europe, and they control what goes on because they have the money. And so unless until Saudi mends its ways, I think in the long run, we talk about the long run, they will stop, because actually oil, as we know, is ceasing to lose its potency around the world, because really the era of oil is ending. I mean, it's going to end anyway in about 10, 30 years because we're going to run out of it. So we have to go to other sources. And Saudi Arabia knows that. And so why these Western educated princes, who take over, go along with this madness is unknown to me. It really doesn't make sense. But then much of this world these days don't make much sense either. We look at Washington, like a lunatic asylum. But we'll live through it. The world will survive. It's survived the worst. I mean, I lived through this all the way through the Second World War, and it wasn't pleasant, but we survived. And we haven't exactly prospered, but we've survived. I'm sure the US will survive. But this deal with Saudi Arabia, of course, as we've seen, is just pure evil. And, it really does a disservice to America to kiss up to all these dictators, as it's done ever since the Second World War, really, against all the principles that America espouses, really. And so, yeah, it would be nice to have a lot of what I call Christian behavior and obeying the UN laws on human rights and so on. It really would, but we'll keep our fingers crossed.
They say in the last 15 minutes of life, the most confirmed atheist entertains conjecture about the existence of God. Those who have the will to power use religion. They use it to divide. It's the principle of the circle. It's the principle of us versus them. We are within the circle. We are the in crowd. Them, they are outside the circle. Religion is a tool for that. It is not the only tool. So I can't ascribe to my dear Brit friend John. I can't ascribe to his take on that. Although I have to somewhat agree with both Albert and John, I did have former Nazis as neighbors when I was growing up after the war. Of course, I wasn't born till after the war, but I think it is interesting that we did have a kind of a very quiet infiltration of the cream of the scientific crop from Germany that did land here and ended up pioneering many of our educational organizations, research facilities, and contractors. And that mentality of the Nazi really, I think, has prevailed in this most important thing, which is policy. Governments are driven by policy. They work on white papers. People think that someone somewhere in government is really very profound and they're doing deep analysis, and what you find is that politics plays a role in selecting policy papers. And then the nation goes forward on those policies, whether they are good or bad, inhumane. I haven't found any humane ones recently. So I think when we address the issue of finding peace, we really need to look at those white papers, those policy papers, find out what's in those ring binders on the shelf that are our response in this country to different challenges, because it is really that policy that could be the dead letter of long gone hands that needs to be revised if we are going to come to a more general humanity worldwide.
God bless the internet. YouTube. Wow. Can't argue with a lot of that Hadi's talk. That was interesting. I'm going to kind of get back to that, refer to that mainly. I'm wondering why such a focused presentation now. Is it part of a bigger agenda? Is Arabia in the crosshairs or something going on? Arabia is the subject of the 28 pages. I guess everybody knows what that is, right? Mm-hmm. America has opened a little crack of an investigation in 9/11 again, and they call it the hidden 28 pages. And it has to do with Saudi funding of the attacks on 9/11, which were in the original report 15, 16 years ago, the America made, and it was withheld from everybody, but Congress says, we want to see it, we want to see it. To me, and this is something I kind of know about, that's what you would call a red herring as far as classical logical fallacies. In other words, it could have quite a bit of truth in it, but it's going to divert you from the real main story. So 911 is a much bigger story, and it will probably take away a lot of energy from the pursuit of even bigger criminals than the Arabians. Anyway, I'm not here to defend Arabia. So I agree with everything Hadi said, that it's just really aggravating to see that level of corruption in our own government, and being, rewarded in the world as being rich people. The one thing I disagree with, and I guess he's not here, I think he walked out, when he said that it just makes him crazy, the irony, he said that we supply so many weapons to them and they get used in ways that we publicly declare that are against our interest and are against humanitarian interests. They're just plain bad. And he says, I just can't stand it. It's so, the irony, he said. That's the one point I want to kind of question, because I'm closer to you, Albert, where there's other forces at play that aren't in your mainstream news reports. If you listen to PBS, yes, it doesn't make any sense. But God bless the internet, and me being semi-retired, I have looked at so much stuff that there is a pattern. There are patterns that are beyond just, wow, how stupid can these millionaires be? These people who boss us around and tax us and take all our money and blow up other countries, they're really dumb, aren't they? Look at the stupid thing they just done. Well, it's not that. This is a deeper corruption, and I wish I had more of a solution, but we just can't focus on one thing, and especially if the mainstream media is behind it. You have to be really careful getting too riled up. And this thing about love and inclusion and all that, that goes for white men too. And I have certain concerns, and please have sympathy.
I guess I'm the last one standing. I want to thank our speaker. I think he did a great job here tonight. Got us all thinking. Some of the things in life are, he brought up some things that I would like to comment on. We appreciate your, I don't know if you heard me, but anyway, we're glad to hear what you had to say today, and it was very good. You covered a lot of bases, you covered a lot of ground, and you got us all thinking. That's the important thing. My background is economics. There is in this world we see things that everything's going amok, and that nothing can be controlled. That's what a lot of people think. And what has happened is, you have to recognize that machines replace people. Machines don't pay taxes. People pay taxes. So the end result is, as machines replace people, we have more people not working. We end up with more people unemployed than we had before. And whenever the economy goes bad, there's always a rise of the lunatic fringe. That's what happens. That's why religion and everything else comes to the surface, because people look for excuses to fight with each other because they're worried, they're nervous, whatever the case may be. But basically, underneath it all is economics. And that's what I'm looking at. In this country, we have 25 million people out of work right now, unemployed or underemployed. And that's not a good thing. It causes a lot of strife. We have $19 trillion in debt right now because corporations have left town and gone overseas. So we have that to deal with, and we don't seem to know how to deal with it. And what we really need to do is level the playing field. We need to put tariffs on corporations so that they'll produce things here instead of producing them somewhere else with cheaper labor. Then we'd get some more jobs back here. Then we could maybe shorten the workday and put everybody back to work again. We'll have more people working paying taxes, less people not working draining taxes. Government get two-fold benefit of increased tax revenue, not raising taxes, with less bills to pay for people that aren't working, if they be working. This might be a direction to go in. Then if you look at Europe and other countries, they're hurting too because they have unemployment which has grown due to automation. We have to adjust to that. If we went to a shorter workday, we wouldn't gain 2 hours leisure time. We would get back what we've already lost in traffic. So it might make for a better life. So maybe things would stabilize and we could get the rest of the world to get along with us. Religion is described by Marx, I think, as opium of the people. It was something to fall back on. It's something that people use improperly different ways. One thing we have in this country is freedom of religion, so we don't end up with one religion dictating everything else. A lot of Islamic countries, Islam is the religion. It becomes part of the government. That's not a good thing. So anyway, I don't have all the answers, but I just thought I'd throw that out for you, and I really appreciate you being here today. Did you get to respond already?
Okay, just kind of sum it up.
And the last word.
Thank you very much, everybody, for your kindness and your hospitality. I would like to end. I come from an oral tradition in Pakistan. I will leave you all with a story and a poem. So the story is from Sufism, which is another sect of Islam that conveys wisdom, knowledge through storytelling. An oral tradition that has been around for more than a millennia, more than 1,000 years now. So the story goes that there is a king who is out with his kinsmen on a hunt, and they have to travel a certain distance, and they enter this area, this region, where the king notices a bullseye painted on, say, a tree trunk and an arrow right in the middle. And then he sees it on a barn, and he sees it on other buildings and trees, and he sees it all over the place that somebody must be a really good marksman, because these are just, bingo, perfect shots everywhere. So the king inquires of his ministers, there must be a good marksman in this area. On the way back, I would like you to, we will rest here, and I would like you to produce that marksman for me. I'd like to meet this great skilled marksman. So on the way back, they stop and they put up tent, and they're cooking their food, and dusk is falling, and his ministers produce the marksman, and it's a young boy, only 12 years old. And the king is really surprised. He says, "Oh my God, at 12 years you have attained such mastery that you can just make bullseye every single time. How did you get to this position? How did you figure this out?" He says, "Your Majesty, it's really, really simple. What I do is that I shoot the arrow first, and then I run over and I paint the bullseye." That's one. The poem is from a Sufi back in the 15th century in Iran, a Muslim nation, and Sufism comes out of Islam. It's a sect of Islam. They have their own sort of practices which are really fun. So the poem is by a poet named Hafiz, spelled Hafiz, and the translation is by an American poet named Daniel Ladinsky. I speak Farsi also. It's a really beautiful translation from the original Farsi. And Hafiz says in this poem, I have 1,000 brilliant lies for the question, how are you? I have 1,000 brilliant lies for the question, what is God? If the truth could be known from words, if the sun and the ocean could pass through this tiny opening called the mouth, someone should start laughing. Someone should start wildly laughing right now. Thank you. That's my summation.
Thank you so much.
I enjoyed the comments. Yeah.
We enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. That was very good.
Well, that's it for tonight. The formal meeting is over, but they kick us out here at 10:30, and our speaker is still here if you want to talk to him. And don't forget your book. There you are. And that's it for the formal meeting. So thank you, and see you next week.
So, second part.